I said, okay.
Yeah.
I looked at your- That my grade, I took it is 109. Okay, and then on this,
Yeah, I think I turned it wrong.
one,
And I turned out.
you just turn both of them in. You turn both of them in. Yep, that's what you did wrong. You have to turn both of them in. Sorry. Good day.
See you soon. Yeah.
I already got mine, figure out mine, I think, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be here the
Okay.
Friday yet, I don't know, I might leave Wednesday. We'll see,
Yeah,
depends, so I'll let you know as soon as I know though.
yeah,
Hopefully I'll
I
figure that out
understand.
today. I already emailed you about the small group, assessment.
Okay,
I said I might need an extension through Wednesday if I leave this Wednesday,
sure.
so, I'll let you know though, like I said, as soon as I figure that out, so.
Yeah, well, that'll be open if you need it.
All right,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
letting me know.
I'm using government money that we could. But it was she graded the money, this is not.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome back. Let's go ahead and get rolling. So we have officially made it past the midway point, halfway through the term. So we've got 5 full weeks left. And as a reminder, we do not have any formal meeting for the final exam time. The last week 10, will be presentations of your last assignment in the course. So look forward to that coming up. I also want to give you a reminder. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to register for spring courses. Spring course registration opened up to everybody else this morning. And I encourage you to get in touch with your advisor, figure out what to take in the spring and get those courses locked in. Especially online courses tend to fill up really quickly. So if you're a comm major or you're a comm minor and you're looking at comm courses, I recommend getting those slotted in as soon as you can. Just as a quick reminder, this spring I'm teaching 4 different courses. I'm teaching a communication research design senior capstone that's designed for people who are interested in developing communication research. I'm teaching communicating health and science, which is an upper division SSC course taught online. Teaching interviewing face-to-face, we'll work on developing skills to do a lot of different types of interviews and prepare in a professional capacity. And then communication theory, where we'll be going over a lot of fundamentals and approaches and understandings of communication. So if you have any questions about the spring schedule, about comm courses for the spring schedule, let me know and I'm happy to help. All right. So last week, we spent some time talking about facilitating small groups, right? Our ability to work together on making decisions in groups, to brainstorm, to think creatively together is a really important thing that we were able to develop through a process of thinking outside the box, of sharing ideas, of allowing people to engage as more than the sum of their parts through synergy. In particular, we took some time last week to talk about brainstorming, the way that we dynamically can work together to develop ideas. Some people have only a few ideas that they protect and see are important, like ostrich eggs. Other people have a whole lot of ideas that they like to throw at the wall to see what sticks, right? So brainstorming is important, and our ability to brainstorm is oftentimes predicated on creating a space for people to openly express ideas, not thinking that ideas are bad or deserve to be shot down, not making fun of people for expressing ideas, but allowing those ideas to emerge naturally, and giving people that open expression of them is an important way to create good solutions to problems. We also talked about the idea that when we're facilitating and working together in groups, that there's factors we've got to consider. We're human beings, we've got to eat, we've got to get food and water and go to the bathroom. And so we have to think carefully about how we structure based on some of those factors. So for today, and for the rest of this week, we're going to be getting into the weeds in regard to group meetings a bit more, right? A lot of us have been in a meeting in some capacity that we have not enjoyed. Maybe it's some type of practice or coaching meeting. We find ourselves frustrated because it doesn't feel like we're getting much out of it. Sometimes we're forced to go for like a club or activity or orientation or some type of event, right? Where we're in a meeting and we feel like time is just passing, it's being wasted. A lot of us have had to navigate like online and Zoom meetings over the last few years, online classes and all of that, and have found ourselves really frustrated with the pace of those things, right? So chances are we found ourselves in meetings that we don't like. And chances are we're going to be having to create meetings for ourselves. So understanding what doesn't work in meetings, how to make meetings less painful is really important, right? You run a good meeting, you save people a lot of time, you save people a lot of money, and you help to create goodwill. You allow people in a group to work effectively. If you're able to study really effectively, if you're able to prepare for an assignment or work in a class really effectively, like those are all skills that help us for the rest of our careers. We're going to be in groups in a whole lot of our lives, so I think it's good to understand how group meetings can be done more effectively. Before we get into some of the nitty-gritty of that, I do want to remind you all that the small group assessment is due in a week, so it's due this Sunday. And for this assignment, I'm asking you to be thinking about some of the in-class activities and scenarios that we've been doing over the term, and asking you to reflect on and report on the ways that you participated and been involved in some of these. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is a list of a lot of the big ones that we've done so far in the term. So even if you had to miss a few class meetings, chances are there are still several that you've been able to participate in. We'll be doing another one today too. That's another candidate that you can include in this assignment. We did an introduction at the very beginning of the class, asking you to find some things in common with other people for extra credit. We did a survival activity where you're stranded in the wilderness. You're asked to rank different items in order of importance. Did an activity to plan for a birthday party, thinking about with some information what might help this party go really well. We were thinking about a new member of a hiking club and how they can culturally adjust to the expectations of that meeting. We were talking about a listenable environment and how to create a good setting for a job interview. Last week, we had a scenario where you were trying to work as a coach for a high school soccer team, and you were being asked to figure out how you might run that meeting and relate to the students. There was initiation if you were working at Dutch Bros with a new employee, how you would help that new employee be acclimated and so on. So there's a lot of different examples that you can draw from here and use in this response. This week's quiz is also due on the 19th, so I'll have the quiz posted later today. Also, the quiz from last week, I extended the deadline out to this Wednesday. So if you complete the week 5 quiz by Wednesday, then you'll be in good shape. You do not need to return in a rough draft or an outline or anything like that. But if you would like to send me a rough draft or outline for feedback to let me know if you're, or to find out if you're on the right track, you're welcome to do that. And I'm happy to give you my feedback and comments on that, as long as you get that to me by Friday. A couple things with regard to this assignment so that you have that reference here. So first of all, for this assignment, if you check under week number 6, you'll notice that the assignment prompt as well as the rubric, right, is here asking you to discuss problem solving and the ways that you did problem solving in your groups, talking about listening and the way that you use listening, also talking about culture and diversity and how that impacted your participation in some of these activities. What I'm really looking for here is using really specific examples. So in the survival activity, I did XYZ, or I noticed when I was doing the soccer club activity that this happened, right? So really drawing from specific examples is what I'm looking for there. Again, this rubric is available for you to review, going over the ways that I'll be grading these different points with regard to the substance, including good examples and application, including good structure with paragraphs, introduction and conclusion, and avoiding spelling, grammar, and other errors. Also making sure to include the in-text citations and works cited list. As a reminder, as a Canvas announcement, I included the APA citation that you can access for the textbook. If you're running into any issues with citations, you're not sure how to cite and integrate sources, I'm happy to chat with you about that, or take a look if you're willing to send a draft or outline so that we can discuss how to optimize that for you. All right, any questions about that assignment, anything we talked about last class or anything else? Okay. And then the writing assignment that we'll be doing after this one, that's the one after this week, I'll introduce and talk a bit more about that. But your last nature writing assignment for this class, I'm going to be asking you to observe a small group that you're not a part of. So it might be a club or activity on campus that you're interested in, or you have a friend or somebody that you know who's in it. And I'll be asking you to observe that meeting, report on that meeting. You'll turn in at the end of the term, both a writing assignment, and you'll also be turning in a presentation that you'll be giving during the final week that will talk about the observation and some of the things that you learned from observing that small group meeting. So we'll talk more about that next week. So getting into this stuff, I think it's important for us to talk about meetings, because meetings are pretty infamous. You might be familiar with the classic phrase, this meeting could have been an email, right? You find yourselves oftentimes, especially in work environments, stuck in meetings where other people are talking, they're droning on, they're unfocused. We don't know what the meeting is about. We don't know why the meeting is going on so long, right? You're frustrated with these types of meetings that are really annoying and don't feel like they are connecting to our lives in a meaningful way. I wanted to share a fun video that I think does a great job of highlighting the worst of group meetings and helping us think about what makes meetings not go well. And while it's silly, I think there are a few things that we can unpack here that help us to explain how meetings can go really poorly sometimes.
We have to come to a decision. Still don't fully understand.
We've been over this and we've just got the materials in the box and we wouldn't spill them. Whoa. Sorry, I realised those from taken.
Quite all right. We're in a bit of a marathon. We started at 9:30.
But it's only 9 now. What is that glowing little box?
Sort of miniature television.
That's my phone. What year is it? 2021?
Oh,
Oh, it's just on material. How long have you been in here?
1986. Like a line for one. Can somebody check on mine? Nothing started.
Don't be selfish. This is
I'm supposed to get in 1993.
And then you changed the note in 2007.
The thing is confusing.
Look, it appears we've spent a good portion of our lives trying to get past the item one. They've probably invented flying cars by now and cured every disease. Not exactly. We can take pictures on our phone and they have robot vacuums, but nobody really likes them. Odor was popular. They milk pots.
We're getting off track. Let's go back to item one. Shall we order steak for lunch?
No, this meeting doesn't even match anymore. Robot vacuums. I was actually leaning towards yes. Let's vote yes. Show of hands for yes.
I'll update it with you. Whether or not to invest in personal computers for the office. I still think they'll never catch on. Back to the meeting. Shall we pick up from item one?
So we could end up being stuck on item one for like 20 years. So I think this is silly, but it does do a great job of helping us think about a lot of the frustrations and challenges that we find in meetings. It goes on and on and on. We're stuck. We can't move forward. We get deadlocked. People lose track of issues. People are blaming each other about different things. And all in all, it's a pretty miserable experience. So I think it's useful for us to break down why we should do meetings, why we're trying to do meetings to fulfill goals, and what some of the alternatives for meetings might be if they don't make sense for that moment, right? I think one of the biggest problems of small groups choosing to meet is that small group meetings are an opportunity cost, right? And by opportunity cost, I mean that people are choosing to be in that meeting when other options are available, right? You, in being a student at EOU who's attending and coming to this class, that's an opportunity cost compared to other things that you could be doing, right? You could be doing a different job, you could be at another university, you could be sitting in. Out of those options, right, you've chosen to come here and come to class. So the opportunity costs are all the things that you could otherwise be doing, right? In the same way, when we find ourselves in a small group meeting, we're feeling an opportunity cost. We're in this meeting, and oftentimes we are taken out of things we might enjoy doing. We're taken out of work. Maybe we really want to just go home and get dinner, right? But we're stuck in this practice or this meeting when there's other options that are available to us. So that's one of the biggest problems, right? Is that we're occupying time and space for a meeting, and so the meeting has to feel worth it. Another really big problem is that group meetings are facilitated poorly. We saw that in video, right, where they are deadlocked, they're not able to move forward, and facilitation can be a big problem. If you are not structuring the meeting with an agenda, with items, with issues, topics that members of the group are going over, then people are going to feel frustrated. Or if you're letting somebody go on a tangent, dominate the discussion, get yourself off topic, other members of the group are going to be annoyed because they feel like you don't have control of the meeting. You're allowing it to veer off in that way, and you're wasting everybody's time. It's very easy to tune out if you feel like somebody's not effectively facilitating meetings. And then lastly, a lot of people are frustrated because there are meetings that can easily accomplish the tasks that they need to through alternatives, right? This meeting could have been an email. So one of the challenges is thinking about why something has to be a meeting when other opportunities exist. For example, if it's about independent work and independently producing a project, well, that's generally something that people can send out or email or work on. Another option that can oftentimes work really well is doing something like a Google Doc, right? Where people are collaborating and working together on that document without actually needing to have a meeting with each other. So these are all factors for us to consider when we're involved in a meeting and we're dealing with that frustration that comes up, or if we're hosting a meeting and we're trying to make a decision about when and how to have that meeting happen. So I think there are a few useful ways to think about how we structure meetings and how we choose to utilize meetings. I think the first and the biggest one is that meetings are always a means to an end, right? The goal of a small group is not to have meetings. That's circular, right? The goal of a group is to accomplish tasks, is to resolve problems, move forward, right? To do the things that the group has been created to do. Sometimes, right, if the group is more recreational, yeah, part of the point is the meeting. But even if you're in something like a D&D guild, at the end of the day, your goal is to complete the campaign, right? You're trying to accomplish the task and you're meeting in order to make that happen. In other words, we should always be thinking about meetings with that purpose in mind. What are we hoping to get out of the meeting? And why are we choosing to have that meeting? Don't have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. Have a meeting because there are things that are worth having the meeting for. That can sometimes mean that if you have a meeting that doesn't need to happen, maybe you normally meet every week and you're getting to the holiday break, or you just don't have anything on the agenda or anything that's important, well, maybe you don't need to meet that week, right? It doesn't always have to be a requirement if it doesn't make sense. So there are 2 to 2.5 things that I think that group meetings are able to do you can't get in other ways. The first thing is the ability to make a decision. Sometimes it doesn't work out when you're stuck on a 2-2, but an ability to make a decision is not something that you're able to achieve as effectively when you're working independently. Think about it this way. If you're trying to make a decision about who to hire for a job and you've got like a committee of 6 or 7 people, right? You're probably going to get a really long email chain. You're going to get people who are taking forever to respond. You're going to have a bit of a back and forth, and that'll take a while, right? It'll be really drawn out, and you have to get back into it every single time you're reading through this like 42 message long email chain, which is really inefficient. But say you've interviewed people for a job, you're trying to decide who to hire, right? You come together for a meeting, you talk about it, and you decide who to hire. Maybe you make a vote, or maybe you reach a consensus. That's a lot more efficient. It allows the group to move forward because you've made decisions on what to do. Maybe you're deciding about events that you're hosting. Maybe you're deciding about, how you're going to strategize for an upcoming game. Those are things that can happen dynamically in real time that you can't get as easily outside of them. The other thing that I think that meetings are really good for is building synergy, right? Synergy is referring to the ways in which members of a group bounce off each other, talk to each other, communicate, share ideas, right? It allows the group to be more than the sum of its parts. If you're planning for a party on your own, right, you start to come up with some ideas and possibilities. But if you're collaborating and working with other people, you're starting to bounce off ideas, you're building off of each other's ideas, you're creating something that's greater than it would have been otherwise. You're able to work together. The half that I would give, the other thing that meetings can be useful for, is sometimes they're helpful for accountability, like you do a study hall or group meeting. That's not necessarily designed to achieve a group purpose, but is designed to make sure that everybody in the group is doing what they need to do, right? So if you were in a study hall or you had accountability buddies, they can be useful to that end. And sometimes there's social elements, right? Building connections among people in the group that can happen. But oftentimes that is toward the goal of helping those meetings run effectively. So consider the benefits of the meeting compared to the alternatives. What is it that makes this specifically need to be a meeting? Oftentimes it comes down to decisions and synergy that you're just not going to be able to get as effectively in other types of correspondence. So this leads us to preparing for meetings, right? And there's a lot of things that I think we can do up front that allow our meetings to go better. One of the first, and I think the biggest thing that you can do, is letting people know as soon as possible if you can't make a meeting, right? if you let people know, like you have a meeting scheduled and you know that you have a conflict, like a doctor's appointment or something else to come up early. One thing that is great about letting people know early is that they can perhaps reschedule for a different time for the meeting. You let them know soon enough, saves you and everybody else time to make sure that you can meet at that alternate time. You don't have to be caught up on everything. And it just helps that go better for you, and it reflects better on you that you have the foresight and the planning that shows about that. One thing you can do that's really effective too is to send that out early, and then perhaps a day or two before the meeting, sending a follow-up reminder that you're not able to attend that, right? So doing something like that can be really important. Another thing to think about here is that attendance at meetings is a two-way street. How many people have ever used the website Doodle? Have ever like completed a Doodle poll or something similar? So I wanted to show off Doodle because I think that it can be really useful. Doodle is a website software that is designed for setting up meetings and meeting availability. So it's really handy, right? So what Doodle does is somebody sends out a Doodle poll, right? And the host sets up times for a meeting, including dates. And then the members of the group get to click the link and then check off on the days that they're available. Right? And the idea is that by sending a list of possible times for a meeting, you're able to set up a time that works for everybody or accommodates the most people, because you have the chance to poll people in advance, right? Oftentimes, if you're working with other students, if you are working in a professional setting, you're going to find that people have limited availability. So setting up a meeting and saying, oh, it's at this time, and somebody has a serious conflict and is not able to go, well, that doesn't necessarily reflect good leadership. Reaching out in advance, checking about the times that people are available, using something like a Doodle poll is a really good way to ensure that you're maximizing people's availability to attend the meeting, right? Get more people in the meeting, you get more voices, you get more perspectives, you get more people included, you get more opportunity for those voices to affect the conversation. If you are meeting, right, and you're planning to attend, another really important thing to do is to prepare. So typically a meeting host in a lot of meetings is going to send out an agenda or at least give you a sense of what to expect as you go into the meeting. Perhaps you know this based on meetings in the past, perhaps they gave you a sense of what they were going to be doing in the next meeting, or they send you a list of things to talk about, like agenda items, a list of things that are going to be gone over, right? The more that you do to prepare going into the meeting, the more efficient the meeting is going to go. You're starting from a better place. For example, if you are deciding who to hire for a job, right, and you have not reviewed anything about the candidates and you're doing that in the meeting, well, it's going to go a lot slower because everybody's going to be looking over it, or maybe you're BSing and not giving as detailed of thoughts. But if there's an expectation that everybody had to review the candidate profiles before the meeting, right, you're going in from that starting point, you get to the good stuff. You get a conversation and a debate about who you want to hire based on the information that you are working through together. So preparation is crucial, really saves time, and being clear about what you expect people to do as they go into the meeting is important. Paying attention is important, but we know that paying attention can be challenging in a group setting, right? There are way more people talking, your slice of the conversational pie is lower. So doing your best to follow along to some of the key points that are raised during the meeting is important. That also helps as you're engaging in the conversation too, right? Being clear and concise is a really important element of small group communication, because if everybody went on a monologue, right, you multiply that by the number of people in the meeting, right? You have 6 people in a meeting and all of a sudden the meeting's been going on for hours or perhaps even years, as we saw, right? So making sure that you're boiling things down to the key points and allowing the input that you give to be responsive and adaptive to what other people are saying is important. If you had a thought about a topic or an agenda item that has long since passed, typically, unless it's crucial, it doesn't make sense to go back and talk about that old thing. You've moved on, you're probably derailing the conversation by going back to talk about that old thing, right? Or you don't want to show that you're not listening by stating the exact same thing that somebody else has said already, right? One of the better ways to engage is to build off of or respond to points that other people are making. I really like Amanda's point about how we might have this guest speaker come to campus. I think we could do this, right? And building on the other points that are being made. Hearing from other people before expressing your views might be important, especially if this is a group that you're not a leader of or you're still acclimating to that group. Giving the chance for other people to share their perspectives, to be informed by those, and using that to inform your own participation in the group is a good idea. We talked a bit in the class about how our assumptions, right, and our appeals to how meetings have been run, how groups behave, appeals to things like tradition, so on, can sometimes be useful, but also mean that we're not adapting, right? So why are we always having this meeting face to face if people are not able to safely get to this meeting? Maybe it makes sense to have this over Zoom for this particular meeting, right? So challenging assumptions, allowing us to adapt and change what we do is important. And knowing when to give in, right? You don't want to be stuck deadlocked 2-2 for years. So realizing that perhaps if there's an issue that's not especially important, you're willing to cave in to the concerns of other people in the group, and also to think strategically about this, right? Because there are some situations where it makes sense to cave in on an issue that is not especially important to you, so that perhaps other people are more flexible with you on an issue that you do find more important, right? So being strategic about concessions is a way that can help you to achieve your goals a bit more in a meeting. When it comes to holding a meeting, right, you might not be doing this now, but there's a very good chance that you'll be asked to host or run a meeting in some capacity in your future. Being able to identify the goals. What is it between when the meeting starts and when the meeting ends that needs to happen? Maybe you need to come to a decision about who to hire and what offer you're going to give to them. How much money are you going to give them to do the job? Okay? What is it that they need to do? And if you're really clear about those goals, the meeting itself is going to go a lot better. Figuring out carefully who needs to attend. So if you have a group of people and you are selective about who you include in the meeting in a way that's not transparent, like it's like a click, that can hurt feelings, right? Somebody wanted to be in the meeting, they never got invited. Why wasn't I included in this meeting? What's going on, right? But you also don't want to invite people who are completely irrelevant to the meeting and get nothing out of it. A really good middle ground to strike is to reach out to people who might be potentially interested, tell them the agenda and what the meeting is about to see if they'd like to do it. Is this a good idea for you? Does this work within your schedule? And inviting people in that capacity, rather than making it mandatory without explaining why, is a much better way of running things. A clear and informative agenda is important, right? The agenda is the written plan. It's what the meeting is doing, right? It's what the meeting intends to cover, right? So our department does a meeting every week. I sent out an agenda of the things we're going to cover in that meeting so that people know what to expect and talk about going in. That can be really useful to email out in advance or to have handed out as a paper copy before the meeting starts so that everybody gets a chance to have that agenda and work through it. Think about it like signposting, right? It's giving a clear symbol of where you're at in the meeting so they can follow along. Arriving early is good, especially if you need to set up tech, right? Getting your microphone working if it's a Zoom meeting is important. So doing that is a good idea. And for goodness sakes, if you are done and you got everything, you do not need to make the meeting go longer. You don't need to talk and ramble and make the meeting go longer than it needs to. For goodness sake, let people out early if they got done early, right? It's a reward for people who worked really effectively and efficiently through tasks, right? They're more incentivized to work efficiently in the future. They know that that gives them more time, and they'll get frustrated if you're stretching that content out. So we've had a couple of classes where you all have been really efficient in your group activities and we've gotten through everything. So we've gotten out early, right? So in that vein, you shouldn't let people cut corners or not do a good job necessarily. But if you've covered what you needed to cover and you've still got some time, then maybe you don't need to keep going. Or maybe you know for the future now that because you have this amount of time left that you could add more to the next meeting's agenda, or you could cut down on the meeting time for the next meeting too, right? So modulate that based on how the meeting goes. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to ask you to work on this prompt on your own, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to discuss and share and build off of this in groups. So here's the scenario. You are involved with a nationally successful motivational speaker who's going to be coming and speaking at EOU. So you are working with a group who is going to host that speaker, right? So you're helping plan their lodging, their travel, their meals, all the things that would involve having a guest speaker who would come and present on campus, right? Your group is tasked with hosting. So what your group should do is have a meeting to discuss and figure out how you're hosting this guest speaker. And what I'd like you to do is take some time, about 7 or 8 minutes, to write an agenda of what you and your group members are going to discuss in this meeting. What are the issues or topics that we need to discuss to host this guest on our campus? And then second of all, I want you to think about what needs to happen for this to be an effective meeting. What do you need to do to be able to host, to run, to facilitate a meeting, to discuss hosting this person on campus effectively? So I'll give you some time to work through, develop an agenda of the items that you're going to cover in that meeting and what needs to happen for that meeting to go well. After that, we will talk about that together in groups and move forward from there. like most folks are about wrapped up here. So what I'm going to ask that you do is take some time. I'm going to number you off into groups to compare some of the agendas and points that you're raising on your own to see what's similar and different, and taking notes of some of those things. So what are some similar agenda items? What are some different agenda items? How did you all think that you would structure the meetings? Take note, compare, contrast some of the ideas that you all came up with, and I'll ask each group to share in just a little bit. We'll do two groups. So we'll do starting on this side, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1. We'll have ones over here on this side, twos over here on this side. Take some time to share and compare some of the ideas that you've come up with here.
Basically, I was looking for it. We were setting up like the transportation and stuff one, so I girl. But basically, I said, first off, we gotta make sure transportation set up, like who's picking them up from the airport or whatever, how they get there, how they get now. We have to have a place to take them from the door or, probably like apartment, hotel, something, gotta have someone to stay up for their stay. And honestly, more so it's the event, like what's the expected attendance, how much seating do we need, is it a one-off or is it like a weekday, get lectures and stuff? Yeah.
How many years, that's pretty simple. I mean, yes, like, set up like a time and location for it, like, actually, like, one of the students that is gonna get, like, where they're gonna do that. I also talked about, like, if we need to set them up, like, seating, like, how many chairs, either stage, that kind of thing. How are we gonna security, like, how are we gonna spreading word out to the students on campus to try and inform them about it, so that they would wanna come, that kind of thing. How do you go about that? We also want to like,
Yeah, I feel like we're on me along the lines. I feel like to me and everyone else can have like a date, time, location.
Yeah.
I just added like what topics we covered.
and then communicating.
I also have like where they're gonna be speaking and who we're gonna invite and how we're gonna invite people.
Email.
Like what kind of
All right.
I just feel like,
You right.
how are we gonna like get the? I know, like,
Oh,
I know
there's it.
it's
Okay.
Yeah.
mandatory for, like, they have Title IX thing on this, like.
For the part two though, for how the group living and community will be to go, I think it's important that everyone brings their own ideas to how we should go, what you said. And obviously, like beforehand, it's not just like if everyone was an idea, and multiple ideas to work out. Which is
We all should at least understand the price of the agenda.
So what are we gonna do with that? That's pretty much what I had, make sure everyone knows the objectives of the meeting and, they have like another comp, like it's a reasonable goal and whatnot for the meeting, because some people either don't have any point in the meeting or they've got like way too much of an agenda and it's just totally unachievable. So, yeah, and also, not having a way to get out of grids, that kind of stuff. Because, you don't want to get stuck in the meeting where you're going the same things over and stuff.
was planning, I provided the deadline where to find travel, but lodging food, possible busy time, like what the difference is between actual. gonna have time. I may want for having the people. Even if it's that way. See what was said and how. Make sure it's.
Make sure everyone knows what they're doing. So, yeah.
Number two, I said, you make sure you have the people in the meeting.
I said there's some definitely facilitator.
When is speaking, like, have them be involved.
And then I said if they need like longer than like an hour, hour and a half, it should be like 30 minutes.
Yeah, make sure the division of labor is to stuff.
I said, just like, let everyone sweet say it's all walking.
Take another couple minutes to finish up your discussion groups.
And then I'm saying, well, you can go to the-
That's like a similar problem. Organize what we're talking about.
And then I'll talk about right away.
Obviously, I'm not-
Time to share. People jump around. Trying to plan for the vacation. You just stop, you just scroll on one thing. It's like, you will like a rich conjecture about one thing, and then all of a sudden you find out something completely different. There's no sort of transition or anything like that.
Yeah. Kind of makes sense.
Sounds like folks are just about done here. I want to start by having us think about the agenda. What were some of the major things that your group discussed as included on that agenda? Let's start over here. What were the things that you all thought to include on the agenda for the meeting?
Said things like, assigning duties, or who's gonna do what. How, where are is this speaker gonna stay, where is he or she gonna eat? You know, getting things set up before, so making sure like the sound systems are in place. And the speakers and the computers and their microphones and all of that, so you have all your technological requirements. Securing where the speaker's gonna be, like, get a permit from the school. And then you said, making sure, how are they gonna get to the school? So they're gonna fly in Independence Airport. Do we still have to go get them? Or something like that. And then.
Did you all think about what way you're going to reach that decision? And how do you decide on a conclusion to some of those things, where they're going to stay, how they're going to get in?
Probably have to communicate with the person.
Yeah,
Here, there's only 3 hotels.
yes, so limited options. Yeah, so gathering information early on about the person who's coming, and using that to inform some of their preferences, or like their dietary restrictions, or that type of thing could be really useful starting out. Right, so that could be one point to start with. And like how your group is highlighting some of the logistical factors to consider, like where are you going to pick them up, where are they going to stay, coordinating with sound system, those things are all really important. One thing that oftentimes comes up in these types of meetings is we've got a lot of ideas, and we know we need to take on these things, but figuring out a decision-making process for how we're going to resolve some of those things is important. For example, is it a very democratic form? Are we going to vote? Are we coming to a consensus? But if there's disagreement about where they want to stay, maybe we want to go fancy and have them stay at the landing, or are they going to stay at Best Western? So figuring out what can best support them and accommodate their needs is important. So figuring out decision-making is a really key element here of how to put together an agenda. So continue to be thinking about that as you're working through developing a plan for how group members participate. And then from this side, I heard some good points here about some of the ways that you might work to have the meeting run effectively? What were some things that came up about running the meeting, making sure the meeting goes well, and so on that you all talked about?
We talked about like making sure everyone has their own time to share their own ideas.
Uh-huh.
Probably a bit more democratic, so kind of doing like a vote majority to come to a conclusion about it, making sure it's organized. We talked about having the right people there too. Maybe that means having the speaker there to see their own preferences or something like that, but we also talked about just make sure that it's all organized, like time and location of the meeting, and that we're all on board with what we need to accomplish, and that we're all aware of that.
Yeah.
And what needs to be discussed.
And then to add on, just ensure that like the division of labor is fair and, we're not putting too much. No one's like idle, but we're not absolutely swamping someone else, that kind of thing. And also have a method like to get out of gridlock, so we don't end up, in purgatory there.
Yes,
like that.
yes.
Group quick to show us.
Yeah. So one thing I really liked from this group was the idea of having assignment of tasks. And I think you all are hitting on that really well too. The idea that people know what they need to do and what their responsibilities are. There's a lot of ways that you can go about this. One way that you can do this is to list out a set of tasks and things that you need people to do. For example, you need one person in charge of the sound system. You need one person who's in charge of managing logic. You need one person who's in charge of food and taking people out, right? I've helped to host guest speakers who've come to our campus, and it kind of feels like it's like a relay or a baton pass because, they're meeting at this time with somebody for lunch, then they're meeting over here for this class meeting, and then they're meeting over here to take a break, right? So coordinating who goes where, when is important. Oftentimes it can be useful to let people volunteer or find a process by which people can agree to sign up for things. That gives people the chance, if they have expertise and background in things, like somebody's really good at setting up tech, right? They can take on that responsibility for the group. So figuring out a way to distribute that is really good. And also thinking about like dividing up that labor. So maybe there is a group of 4 who's hosting this person. And maybe you've identified like 8 to 10 tasks that need to be done, and you give people like 2 or 3 that you're assigning. So giving people the chance to work effectively in groups on that basis, and have people make sure they know what they need to do and when, and that you're all in communication with each other about that can be a good way to help that work effectively too, right? All that to say, you could have a meeting, right, where you're talking about this guest speaker, and that meeting could go awful. You could get nowhere, have no idea what you're doing by the end of the meeting, or you could come out of that meeting and you could get done early. You could have a complete plan or itinerary of how you're hosting that person. Everybody knows what they need to do, and it can be great, right? The make or break is your ability to prepare, to plan, and to host a good meeting. So there's a lot of context like that where the ability to prep and plan for a good meeting is crucial. So to wrap up for today, we talked about group meetings, about how we don't like them a lot of the time, but they can be really useful to achieve an agenda, and some of the ways that good preparation and planning help group meetings go well. We'll talk about this a little bit more on Wednesday, looking into facilitation and facilitating good meetings. So if you haven't done so already, please email or pass forward your attendance activity for the day. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you again on Wednesday.
Thank you for the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Daniel.